May 13th, 2023, 2:17 in the morning. Luhansk, 80 kilometers behind Russian lines. A Storm Shadow cruise missile streaks through Ukrainian airspace at 850 kilometers per hour. Altitude, 40 meters above terrain. Mission, destroy Russian command headquarters, coordinating operations across the Eastern Front. Flight time from launch, 11 minutes. Russian air defense systems scan the skies. They don't see it coming. In 90 seconds, the building housing 30 senior Russian officers will cease to exist. This is Millfront, where we analyze the weapons that strike where enemies think they're safe. Storm Shadow, British engineering. French variant called Scalp EG, air-launched cruise missile, weight 1,300 kilograms. Warhead BROACH, that's Bomb Royal Ordnance Augmented Charge, designed specifically to penetrate hardened bunkers before detonating. Range, officially 250 kilometers, but evidence suggests 560 kilometers or more depending on launch parameters. Cost, approximately $2 million per missile. Ukraine received its first Storm Shadow missiles in May 2023 from the United Kingdom. France followed with Scalp variants. Total numbers remain classified, but analysis suggests 100 to 200 missiles delivered through 2023. Each missile represented the capability to strike any target in occupied Ukraine and deep into Russian territory near the border. For Russia, this changed everything. Suddenly, command posts, ammunition depots, repair facilities, and air bases 300 kilometers from the front were vulnerable. Nowhere was safe. Which weapon brought the deepest strike capability to Ukraine? A. HIMARS. B. Storm Shadow. C. Neptune. Drop your answer. Let's understand what makes Storm Shadow fundamentally different from previous weapons Ukraine possessed. HIMARS, the American rocket system that dominated headlines through 2022, has maximum range of 80 kilometers with standard ammunition. Exceptional weapon for hitting logistics hubs, command posts, and ammunition depots near the front line. But 80 kilometers means Russian forces could position critical assets beyond range and maintain relative safety. Storm Shadow's 250-plus kilometer range eliminated that safety zone entirely. Russian headquarters in Luhansk, Donetsk City, Mariupol, Melitopol, Berdyansk all became vulnerable. Russian naval facilities in Sevastopol, previously untouchable, suddenly faced precision strike threat. The strategic depth advantage Russia enjoyed for the first year of war evaporated overnight. The missile's navigation system combines GPS, terrain-following radar, and infrared imaging for terminal guidance. This makes it nearly impossible to jam or deceive. GPS can be spoofed or jammed, but terrain-following radar cross-references actual ground features with pre-programmed digital maps. If GPS fails, the missile continues using terrain matching. In terminal phase, infrared camera compares actual target appearance with stored imagery. The missile knows exactly what it's looking for and can identify the correct building even in complex urban environment. The BROACH warhead deserves detailed explanation. This isn't a simple high-explosive bomb. BROACH uses two-stage penetration. First stage, initial charge blasts through outer layers of reinforced concrete, creating entry hole. Second stage, main warhead, delays briefly after penetration, then detonates inside the structure. The explosion occurs within the building, maximizing internal damage while minimizing blast waste outside. This design allows Storm Shadow to destroy hardened command bunkers, underground ammunition storage, reinforced aircraft hangars, basically any target protected by concrete. Standard bombs might damage such facilities. BROACH destroys them. Stay with me, because what happens in the next 8 minutes over Luhansk demonstrates why precision deep strike capability matters more than quantity of shorter range systems. May 13th, 2:17 a.m. Storm Shadow enters terminal attack phase. The missile descended from cruising altitude of 40 meters to 10 meters for final approach. Terrain following radar keeps it below radar coverage. Russian S-300 and S-400 air defense systems scan for threats, but their radars are optimized for high-altitude targets like aircraft and ballistic missiles. Low-flying cruise missiles and ground clutter are extremely difficult to detect and track. The missile's flight path took it around known air defense positions. Pre-mission planning identified S-400 locations through intelligence collection and OSINT analysis. Storm Shadow's route automatically adjusted to exploit gaps in coverage. This is what military planners call terrain masking. The missile uses hills, forests, and buildings to shield itself from radar detection. 2:18 a.m. Russian air defense operators near Luhansk detect brief radar return, something fast and low. Before they can achieve tracking lock, the target disappears back into ground clutter. They report possible contact, but assess it as likely false alarm. They're wrong. 2:18 a.m. and 45 seconds. Storm Shadow transitions to terminal guidance. Infrared seeker activates. The camera scans the target area comparing real-time imagery with stored reference photos. Target building identified. A Soviet-era administrative complex, reinforced concrete construction, now serving as Russian 20th Combined Arms Army headquarters. Intelligence reports suggest command staff of 30 to 40 officers inside planning offensive operations. The missile adjusts final approach angle to strike at optimal impact point. BROACH warheads are most effective when striking at slight downward angle against vertical surfaces. The guidance system calculates perfect trajectory automatically. 2:19 a.m. Impact. Initial charge detonates on contact with the building's reinforced concrete wall. The shaped charge blast punches through 2 meters of concrete and rebar. Microseconds later, main warhead enters through the breach hole. It penetrates 6 meters into the building's interior, into the command center operations room. Then, detonation. The explosive force releases inside enclosed space. Blast pressure has nowhere to disperse. It reflects off walls, floors, ceiling, amplifying destructive effect. The entire operations room collapses. 3 floors above pancake down. Estimated casualties: 23 to 28 officers killed immediately, including 1 major general and 3 colonels. Another 12 wounded critically. But the physical destruction is only part of the impact. The command network for Russian forces across 150 kilometers of front line just lost its coordination node. Battalion commanders can no longer reach headquarters for orders. Artillery fire missions lose coordination. Reserve units don't know where they're needed most. This command disruption will last 36 to 48 48 hours minimum, while Russia establishes alternate command posts and restores communications. Ukrainian forces launched ground attacks across this sector 8 hours later, exploiting the command confusion. How many Storm Shadow missiles did Ukraine use in major strikes during summer 2023? A. 1520, B. 4050, C. 80, 100? Answer coming. This is Millfront. Real weapons, real strategic impact, real transformation of battlefield geometry. The Luhansk strike wasn't isolated. It represented the first of systematic campaign targeting Russian command and control throughout occupied territories. Let's examine additional high-value strikes from May through September 2023. May 16th, Berdyansk port facilities. Storm Shadow destroys S-400 air defense battery protecting Russian logistics hub. Secondary explosions suggest ammunition storage was nearby. The S-400 system costs approximately $500 million. One $2 million missile destroyed it. The mathematics favor the attacker dramatically. June 20th, Chonhar Bridge connecting Crimea to mainland Ukraine. Storm Shadow damages, but doesn't destroy the bridge. The missile's 450-kilogram warhead isn't optimized for bridge destruction, but damage forces Russian forces to reduce traffic flow and conduct repairs under constant threat of follow-up strikes. Logistics throughput to Crimea drops by estimated 30%. July 22nd, Sevastopol Naval Headquarters. Storm Shadow hits administrative building housing Black Sea Fleet Command Staff. Building severely damaged. Casualties unknown, but Ukrainian intelligence assesses significant losses among senior naval officers. Black Sea Fleet operations noticeably decrease for following 2 weeks. August 4th, Saki Air Base, Crimea. This strike becomes controversial. Storm Shadow destroys aircraft maintenance hangar. Satellite imagery shows 3 Su-30 fighters damaged or destroyed. Russian sources claim only minor damage. OSINT analysis supports Ukrainian assessment. 3 fighters at $50 million each. $150 million lost. September 13th. Russian headquarters in occupied Sevastopol. Another command post strike. Storm Shadow penetrates underground command bunker. BROACH warhead proves its design effectiveness. Russian Black Sea Fleet commander reportedly wounded, though this remains unconfirmed. Fleet operations tempo drops significantly afterward. These strikes followed consistent pattern. Target high-value assets deep behind lines. Exploit gaps in air defense coverage. Maximize strategic impact per missile. Force Russia to disperse critical assets, which reduces their effectiveness and increases protection costs. Better strategic use of limited precision missiles. Mass strikes on frontline positions or precision strikes on command nodes. Comment M for mass or P for precision. The Russian response to Storm Shadow evolved through summer 2023. Initially, they attempted to shoot down the missiles using existing air defense. This proved difficult. Storm Shadow's low-altitude flight profile and small radar cross-section made interception challenging. Russian sources claimed successful intercepts, but analysis of debris patterns suggested most intercepts were missiles that successfully detonated on target. Russia redeployed additional S-400 and Pantsir air defense systems to protect critical facilities in rear areas. This had 2 negative effects for Russia. First, it diluted air defense coverage at the front line where Ukrainian aircraft and drones operated. Second, it tied down mobile air defense systems in static positions, making them less flexible for supporting combat operations. Russia dispersed high-value assets. Ammunition depots that previously stored thousands of tons in single location got broken into dozens of smaller storage sites. This reduced vulnerability to single strikes, but massively increased logistics complexity and transportation requirements. Command posts relocated frequently, sometimes daily, to avoid being targeted. This constant movement disrupted operations and degraded command effectiveness. Russia accelerated construction of hardened aircraft shelters at air bases. Standard open parking made aircraft easy targets. Reinforced concrete shelters provide protection, but construction takes months and requires significant resources. Meanwhile, aircraft remained vulnerable. The strategic impact exceeded the tactical damage. Storm Shadow forced Russia to devote enormous resources to rear area defense. Resources that could have supported frontline operations instead protected headquarters and logistics nodes. This is the definition of strategic success, forcing enemy to expend disproportionate resources defending against relatively small number of weapons. If you understand that strategic effect matters more than tactical kills, type Millfront now. Let's analyze the technical factors that made Storm Shadow so difficult to counter. The missile's flight profile alternates between terrain following and sea skimming depending on environment. Over land, it flies 30 to 50 meters above terrain, using hills and forests for concealment. Over water, it drops to 5 to 10 meters, below most naval radar horizons. The missile's radar cross-section is extremely small, comparable to large bird. Stealth shaping reduces radar reflection. Radar-absorbent materials coating critical surfaces further reduce detectability. When flying low in ground clutter, even powerful radar systems struggle to distinguish storm shadow from terrain features or weather effects. The missile's speed, approximately 850 kilometers per hour, provides another defensive advantage. Even if air defense radar detects the missile, the time available for intercept is minimal. At 850 km/h, Storm Shadow covers 14 kilometers per minute. From detection to impact might be only 2 to 4 minutes. Not enough time for manual engagement decision-making. Automated systems must handle interception, and automated systems can be fooled. Storm Shadow carries electronic countermeasures package. Details remain classified, but the system can jam or deceive some types of radar. Against older Soviet-era air defense systems like S-300PS, these countermeasures prove highly effective. Against modern S-400, effectiveness is reduced but still significant. The combination of stealth, speed, low-altitude countermeasures, and intelligent routing makes Storm Shadow one of the most survivable cruise missiles in operational service. Russian intercept rate probably doesn't exceed 20 to 30%, and that's optimistic estimate from Russian perspective. What would Russian air defense doctrine recommend against low-flying cruise missiles? Comment your tactical assessment. The political and strategic implications of Storm Shadow extended beyond immediate military effects. Britain's decision to provide these missiles represented significant escalation in Western support. For first time, Ukraine received weapons explicitly designed for deep strike missions. Previous Western weapons, including HIMARS, had range limitations preventing strikes into Russian territory. Storm Shadow's range could theoretically reach Russia proper from Ukrainian launch points. Britain imposed restrictions. Storm Shadow could be used against targets in occupied Ukrainian territory and Crimea, which Britain considers Ukrainian. Strikes into Russia proper were prohibited. Ukraine largely respected these restrictions through 2023, though some strikes hit targets very close to Russian border. The restrictions highlighted strategic tension in Western support. Western nations wanted Ukraine to succeed, but feared escalation to direct NATO-Russia conflict. Long-range strike weapons capable of hitting Moscow or St. Petersburg created escalation risk. Storm Shadow's 250-kilometer range provided deep strike capability without threatening Russia's strategic depth. France's Scalp missile deliveries included identical restrictions: use against occupied territory, authorized; use against Russia proper, prohibited. This created operational complexity. Ukrainian mission planners had to verify every target's location, precisely to ensure compliance with restrictions. Despite restrictions, Storm Shadow provided Ukraine with strategic reach it previously lacked. The psychological impact on Russian forces in rear areas proved significant. Officers who previously felt safe in Crimea or Donetsk suddenly faced precision strike threat. This fear degraded decision-making and morale. Here's the answer to our question. Analysis of satellite imagery, damage reports, and debris recovery suggests Ukraine employed approximately 40 to 50 Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles in major documented strikes from May through September 2023. So B is correct. Each strike typically used 1 to 3 missiles depending on target hardness and importance. Total delivery probably reached 100 to 200 missiles, but many haven't been used or were used in strikes without public documentation. The cost-benefit analysis favors Storm Shadow despite high per-unit price. $2 million per missile seems expensive until you calculate target value. Destroying S-400 battery worth $500 million, 250 to 1 return. Destroying command post that disrupts operations across 150 kilometers of front. Value is immeasurable, but certainly exceeds missile cost dramatically. 3 questions for strategic analysis. First, should Britain have imposed range restrictions, Or should Ukraine receive full freedom to strike any military target, including those in Russia proper? Second, is Storm Shadow's precision and range more strategically valuable than 25 times its cost in artillery shells that could be purchased instead? Third, what would you prioritize as Russian commander forced to choose between defending frontline positions or protecting rear area headquarters from Storm Shadow strikes? Subscribe to Millfront. We analyze the weapons and strategies that determine not just who wins battles, but who wins wars. The skies over occupied Ukraine carry invisible threat now. Russian officers in supposedly safe headquarters scan nervously for incoming missiles they can't see until seconds before impact. Storm Shadow didn't win the war. No single weapon system ever does. But it fundamentally changed the strategic calculus. It eliminated the rear area sanctuary. It forced Russia to defend everywhere simultaneously, which means defending nowhere effectively. British and French engineers designed the missile. Ukrainian planners selected the targets, and Russian commanders learned that distance from the front line no longer guarantees safety in modern warfare. Strategic reach defeats tactical depth. Precision strikes achieve what mass bombardment cannot. The missile flies on. Stay strategic.